Hello, and welcome back to HunterTuned. Today I am doing some work on my Honda CRX. So this car, I believe, is a 91 Honda CRX SI, and I bought the car for 500 bucks, and it had a built-up single cam in it, and I recently had sold the engine and transmission out of this car. So selling the engine and transmission actually paid for the entire car. So I got 500 for the motor and trans, and here I am left with a bare shell. So I'm going to be doing a B-Series engine swap into this car, and wanted to kind of show you guys how to go about it and how I'm going about it, I guess. Kind of the cheapest way maybe and the most effective way, because eventually I would like to see this car somewhere in the 11-second range in the quarter mile. And I'm going to show you some of the parts that we're using and how I'm going about it. So anyways, let's get started. This is the transmission that I'm going to be using. This is a 92 to 93 Acura Integra DA. So the Integra DA chassis, just like the one that is behind me right here. I believe this is a 92 or 93 as well. So factory, these cars come with a cable transmission, but it is a big spline input shaft, and it uses 3 shift forks. So most of the cable transmission stuff is a 2 shift fork deal, or like, you know, it's 3 shift forks, but one of them's tied into the other one kind of thing, and they're weaker. They have a smaller input shaft, so you have to use a different style clutch, and some other things that they're just not that great of a transmission, let me just tell you. So last year I had a CRX on the channel that we kind of went through a bunch of transmissions, because I kept using the old school style transmissions, and they're just built a lot weaker, and all of them by now are junk. Trust me, I've went through like 6 or 7 different cable B16 transmissions that were you know, the small spline input shaft, and they're all the freaking engagement teeth are always ground down, and they're just like super old transmissions. So and they're just not upkept. A lot of stuff is now hydro transmission, and the cable stuff is kind of long gone. But to do this kind of on a budget, and the way I like to do it, at least on my last CRX, is I got one of these 92 to 93 cable transmissions with they're pretty much exactly the same as a hydro transmission, minus the throw-up bearing engagement. So on this transmission, the throw-up bearing engagement is still done with the cable. So it just, you know, obviously pushes the throw out in and out. I just overextended it. Freaking idiot. Okay, so anyways, this is still actuated by the cable, but still uses a lot of the hydro internals. So what you can do is you can actually take guts from any other hydro transmission. I had a couple GSR transmissions, hydro transmissions, and I was looking for a B16 for a while, and I finally found one. So I found it was out of a 99 SI or something like that. It's a hydro B16 transmission, and pretty much just put both transmissions side by side, opened them both up, and took the guts from the B16 transmission and plopped them right into this case. And that way it is a B16 hydro transmission, but it utilizes the cable actuation still. So we don't have to deal with changing the pedal assembly and changing, you know, however guys go about doing the cable to hydro conversion. Because a lot of times the cable to hydro conversion will cause more problems than it's worth, and it's almost better off just to stay with the cable that comes with the car. And I loved the pedal feel and everything like that. Super easy to adjust it. No dealing with bleeding or anything like that. And just converting the car over is kind of just not in the budget for me. So I like doing it this way. It keeps the cost down, and at the end of the day, I think it works pretty good. But I have a set of engine mounts for this car that accommodate a cable transmission. That's why, another reason why I wanted to stay cable. So I got some mounts here. I don't know if they're Hasports or not. One of them says Hasport. The other ones are just kind of just aluminum color. There's no actual like stamp on them, but this one is a Hasport here. So I got these mounts from a guy. They're the cable B-Series swap mounts that utilizes the cable transmission, and then the rear mount is already on the car now. So one thing that I was confused about, at least, oh, and you also need a DA T-bracket as well. So this is off the Integra DA chassis as well. You'll need this T-bracket that bolts onto the back of the engine there. And So for the rear mount, the factory one looks something like this. It uses 3 holes, and the back one is a fucking bitch to get out, but you got to use a little extension wobble, and you can get that out. But this is the factory rear mount system that goes on the single cam. And this is the new mount that we're going to be using with this T-bracket that bolts onto the engine. So that'll slide onto there. This will bolt to the engine and transmission. And we'll be all good for our rear mount. But one thing that is a little bit confusing with the CRX chassis is the rear mount has 2 different bolt hole options. So the factory mount uses these 2 on the left here and 1 on the right in the back. So if that makes sense for you guys, I'm trying to explain it. But there's pretty much 4 bolt holes back there. And the aftermarket mounts are only a 2-bolt design. So the 2-bolt design with this mount setup and whatever, you have to use the 2 bolt holes that are closest to the driver's side. At least here in the US, the driver's side being on the, if you're looking at the car from the front, the right side. So now that that mount is done, we got that one installed. Now we're just kind of buttoning up the engine. And we got a post mount from my buddy Garrett. He's actually a Patreon supporter of the HunterTuned channel here, and he's helped me out plenty of times in the past with like little bolts and stuff like that. So that's super cool of him that he's still kind of supporting HunterTuned here. I appreciate all my subscribers out there, and Garrett is one of the top subscribers that has been around the longest, I think. Anyways, thanks for all the support on the videos, guys. And but anyways, he sent in a post mount. So this is the one that bolts onto the engine. You need a specific one from a DA. Like I was saying, a lot of this stuff that swaps into the CRX is Integra DA related. So now when we use this mount, which bolts into the chassis over here, like so, this guy will bolt onto the post mount that Garrett sent in to me. So we just have to get a bolt to run through this guy and then use a nut on this side. So that'll be something I have to do once the engine is in. That should be no big deal. And then we're also kind of trying to use the D-Series alternator. So this car had, I'm a little bit skeptical about using it because it had some issues where the battery light would come on at high RPMs. With the single cam, I had to, the guy that I got it from put the wrong alternator on it, and the pinout was different on the wiring harness. So some of this stuff, if it's not like OBD0 specific to the harness, they're pinned differently into the alternator plug. And when I got the car, it had a bunch of wiring issues, and I couldn't figure it out, and it was the freaking alternator causing the problem. So I took the alternator back and swapped it out for this one, which is a, you know, specific to the car alternator. But the pulley on it is extremely small. So I'm thinking because the pulley is so small on the alternator, I was almost overdriving it after 7,000 RPM, because with the little single cam that was in here, I think it had issues after like 6,500 maybe, where the battery light would kind of start to come on. And I think I was just overrunning the alternator. So what I'm gonna try to do is I have a couple alternators laying around, and I might see if I can find a larger diameter pulley so we don't spin this thing so fast, because the smaller pulley is obviously going to make it spin faster, and a larger pulley on here would make it spin slower. And with this B-Series motor that I have, it's a B20, and we're using a B20 lower crank pulley, which is the largest of the B-Series pulleys and is quite a bit larger than the stock single cam pulleys. So we're going to be spinning that alternator even faster, and we're going to rev the engine even higher, because this is a high compression B20 VTEC with Skunk 2, Tuner 2 camshafts, valve springs, and some other things that we're trying to make, you know, we're trying to make some jam with this thing. So anyways, we are going to see if we can still use the B20 pulley here, but I'm going to try to use the D-Series alternator. And I've had a lot of questions asking about how I went about using the D-Series alternator. And it's honestly quite simple. I just like to use the D-Series alternator because it keeps the harness and everything simple. And with the CRX chassis, the D-Series alternator is a lot smaller, so you don't have to clearance the frame rail there to actually accommodate the alternator, because a lot of times on CRX chassis, because the engine bay is so small, you have to pound in on the frame right here, which somebody previously already did. But if you don't have a frame rail that's pounded to shit, and it's factory and you don't want to ruin it, this is a good way to do it. You can just use the single cam alternator and get a belt that kind of tensions it real close to the motor. Which you just kind of got to play with the belts and see what belt would work and what belt won't work, and play with them that way. But this is a single cam alternator, like I said, bolts right up to the B series bracket here. The top bracket does not bolt up perfectly. You could use the top bracket from here and tension it just a little bit offset here, but sometimes you can't get the tension perfect with the bracket, you know, the bracket in the factory spot there. So sometimes what you can do is you can actually space the bracket out. I've used just like some washers, like 5-6 of them, and it'll space this bracket out a little bit so you can have more tension on the belt. But like I said, playing with belt size really is the only thing that you need to do to get this to work, because it should just bolt right up. I think this is a B series bracket here. I'm not sure if it's a single cam. I don't think they're the same, but yeah, so anyways, we're going to try to use that alternator there, mainly because it is brand new, and I don't feel like, you know, going out and spending the money on a new one here. So we got to get the rest of the motor buttoned up here, and then we're going to try to throw this thing in the car today. Got the transmission all done earlier, and got that rear mount on, so now all we have to do is get the clutch and flywheel onto the engine after we figure out the alternator situation, because you do not want to put an alternator in one of these cars with a B series swap while it's still in the car. If it's not hard enough to do an alternator on a normal Honda Civic, it is much harder on a CRX with the no room on the frame rail there. Half time, you almost got to pull the motor just to get the alternator out. All right, so we are actually taking a little break from the CRX because I still have to find some sort of alternator to run with this thing. I was going to find a pulley at my house, but I don't have anything, so I'm either going to run this distributor still, or this alternator still, or I'm going to just go buy a different one. I don't quite know what I'm going to do yet because I'm worried about that damn battery light coming on at high RPM. I don't know what the cause was for that issue, but I don't know. Anyways, we're working on the Integra again, and we got this thing back on the dyno, and it's making a lot better power, finally. So Carlos picked up a brand new distributor for it. I threw the distributor on, and it was still kind of plotting a bullshit power curve. I'll show you guys a dyno graph here. I just did like a little tug here on a base map, and we did this red. Here, I'll delete these fucking things here. So this is the first pull that we did with the car. As you can see, the power comes in real strong, and then it dies off, like just completely fades away, and then it cracks VTEC. It comes back for a minute, and then fades away. So this is just like an indicator of timing just being off somewhere. I just couldn't figure out where it was, because the distributor, the new one, was actually syncing up with the light and everything like that. I was lining up, the marks were lining up on the timing light, and still couldn't figure it out. So I rechecked the cam timing, because I was talking to like Jason Waters a little bit, and he's like, and Kurt Miller, and they were just like, dude, timing's got to be off. And I'm like, I know, it's got to be off. I figured it is in the distributor, which I think it still was a little bit. The distributor was still a little bit to blame. But if you guys want to compare this to this, we have a way better power curve now. So you can see that the car actually makes more power down here and upstairs. It is kind of falling off a little early. Jason was saying that these 4-2-1 headers, this is a DC Sports header, they kind of naturally want to just die off up top. They don't like to carry out that good. So it's definitely choking it up a little bit. And I still have to lower VTEC down and clean the fueling up on this thing, but way better already. You guys can see here that we have a dip. That power starts to drop off, which just means it's running out of camshaft before VTEC. So we can actually eliminate this issue by bumping VTEC to around 5 or so. VTEC's actually set at 5,700 right now. So let me sync these up so it looks better for you guys too. We can sync these Y and X axis. There we go. But yeah, you can see that the power kind of dies off before VTEC there, or the torque does, and you know, and then once it hits VTEC, it kind of comes back up. But anyways, I'm gonna do some more tugs on this thing quick here, and we're gonna see if we can clean this map up even more than it already is. but I'm super happy we finally got this thing figured out. So Minto fucking Pinto. Alrighty guys, so we got the car running a lot better like I was saying. We just did another tug on it. I had to switch it back over to chrome. It was on my Honda for a while when I was just checking everything over. And I put it back on a chrome ECU now, and first pull in, we're making good power. You can see it's carrying out how it should. It's dying off around 7,800 or so, which is probably pretty normal, 7,500 actually. And we got a little bit of a dip here by VTEC. I'm actually going to lower the VTEC down to like 4,300. I think that's right where it's going to want to be. And we're going to do another tug here and see how this curve picks up. I'm hoping this graph will look really nice by the time I'm done. And we're just going to get this thing done. I'm super happy that this thing's running so damn good. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to load up a new tune or a new run on the log here. I just got the VTEC set lower, and we're going to do a pull. So watch and enjoy. Where do you guys want to sit? Do you guys want to sit right here? Or do you want to sit like back here? You want to sit back here or up here? I don't know. I'll put you right here. How about that? You know what? You won't be able to tell me what you want, so I'm sorry. Alrighty guys, so we got the Integra off of the dyno now. It is finally tuned up and running good, but I do think that the bottom end was hurt before it got here, and now that it's making proper power and stuff like that, it's kind of showing its weaknesses a little bit. I mean, it's fine if I let it cool down on the dyno with the fan on it for a while. The oil pressure is fine, but after you put some heat in it and run it a couple times, the VTEC quits working. So I think that the bearings are gone in this thing. Like it needs to get bearings put in it. You could probably just drop the pan and throw some bearings in it, which I think he's going to be doing. But we did end up making 190 horsepower and 145 foot-pounds of torque. The car's running great. Like literally pulls bus lengths on what it did before. So I'm super happy. I think I showed you guys the before and after setup there. Crazy big gains on this car. Just an awesome outcome here, other than the bearing issue and the oil pressure problem. It might be okay if, you know, maybe we can just like fucking change the oil and put thicker shit in it again, but I think it'd just be best to drop the pan, put some bearings in it, and go again, you know. But anyways, this car's done, finally. Good to go. So, on to the next one, I suppose, which is going to be my CRX. I have like 2 or 3 other customer cars that are going to be coming in here, but I think I'm going to take another day off tomorrow. At least like part of my day I'm taking off. I'm not working completely on customer cars right now. I want to take a couple hours tomorrow and get this thing stuffed together because we did get the transmission together. I got the mounts on, the fucking, all the other shit. I just got to get an intake manifold gasket and figure out an alternator situation, and this thing can go in the car. So that's going to be next. Stick around. Maybe I'll do another daily video tomorrow. We'll see. I'm not sure. But that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. And have a great night and a better tomorrow.